welcome back to the Socialist Shelf. We're talking Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, Part 2, right now. So, hold on to your hats, because we're jumping through time.
And I want to pick up on, mentioning him being unstuck in time. Another thing that's interesting that he leaves to the reader is it never tells you why Billy's unstuck in time, Mm-hmm. In fact, the Tralfamadorians are like, yeah, no, we have nothing to do with it. We can explain it. We don't got anything to do with it. And, there's really the easy reading is, well, he got in a plane crash and he's got, he suffered damage and he has trauma and he has a weird way of viewing the world. And that can be simultaneously true with other things. But it is interesting, and it also allows, Vonnegut to air out some of his own personal philosophies and feelings. It's another thing that, is left up to question. And another thing that, like the Tralfamadorians, that feels so out of place in the novel. It feels like if you told me I was going to read a book about the firebombing of Dresden, I just would not imagine little green men would appear. I would not imagine time travel would appear. It's simply not a thing I would think would be in the novel. I don't think there's an easy answer for it. I don't think there's an easy, some interpretations of this book likes to say the easy answer, well, Billy goes insane. And be that as it may, whether Billy is insane or not, it's still not something that you can just kind of hand wave, Mm-hmm. Even if you want to point out, well, Montana Wildhack is wearing a necklace that has the same words that were up in Billy's office. That means that he's dreaming. Okay, but also, like, who cares? That's not the point,
Right, exactly. It's his family around him, his daughter who thinks he's senile by that point, right? It's the question is not, okay, is this person insane or not? The question is, whose perspective are we seeing this from?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you can only really understand that perspective if you get in that person's head.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he like Jacob mentioned, he definitely gives a lot of stuff to go either way. It felt almost like Total Recall, where you can just kind of read the events either way.
Sure.
I mean, like him being in the bookstore, the same, and having the Kilgore Trout stories be like somewhat identical to what he's experiencing, and seeing the actress right before he's like starts describing these visions and everything, and it can go both ways. I definitely found myself, though, this time, I think the first time I thought, okay, he's just crazy. But this time I was like, you know what? I don't know why, but I gave complete credence to it. I was like, yeah, this is happening. This is real. He got kidnapped.
I mean, Tralfamadorians pop up in other novels.
Yeah.
It's a collective delusion if it's not, if it's a delusion,
They're canon. And I definitely like his like, again, like, he gives this description of his death in the future. Which is told like it's something that's already happened, because again, the way that time is, told in the story is very interesting.
Fixed.
But he has this messianic moment where he's just like, his security guards are all around him, and he's like, no, like, this must go. And then, like we talked about earlier, Lazzaro's is it Lazarro or Lazzaro's hitman that he's hired?
I think it's Lazarro himself.
That's so much funnier to imagine, like decrepit little Lazarro with the las gun.
Another great, not to talk too much about the movie, but another great scene in the movie. Oh my God.
Gosh, that's in the movie.
They age him up, and it's so funny. Like,
Okay,
it's like prosthetic,
that.
It's so funny.
Is there any sign that America's been balkanized in the film?
There's like a flag that you don't know what it's the flag of. In the background. Okay. So like if you'd read the book, you'd be like, oh, it's the flag of like whatever state. And it is like, it's a weird looking, it's clearly like a different future culture. So like, yeah, there's like signs to it, but it doesn't really harp on it.
And nor does the book.
Yeah.
Something talking about Paul Lazarro, something I really wanted to talk about that stuck with me the first time, and it definitely again the second time, is the portrayal of the British officers in this book is fantastic.
Also, for context for the readers, before you say that,
yeah, go ahead.
Just to like give context if you haven't read the book, when they get taken to a German prisoner of war camp, there's a section of the prisoner of war camp that's like treated better than like the Russian section, which it's British officers. And they're taken in by these British officers. And Trent, you can talk about what you're going to say about them. I just wanted to, clarity for the listeners, because it's easy to get carried away.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's they get to this camp, and the camp is specifically designed for Russian soldiers. And I think this is where you can tell Vonnegut is one of the people who actually understands that the way that the war was fought by the Nazis on the Eastern Front is vastly, vastly, vastly different. I mean, the brutality of the Western Front is definitely portrayed in the book, but like you can't even begin to imagine. And the Russians who are interned at this camp are treated like subhuman dogs, and and they're being killed. Anytime that Billy Pilgrim like interacts with them, they're like listless. They're just like, you know what I mean? They're not impolite or
they're nothing
mean or brutish. Yeah. They're just like their souls are just sucked out of them. They're just these just already dead people just existing. And then you see you interact with these people, and then you have these British soldiers who have like infinite rations. They're all
because of a clerical error.
Exactly. They're all bulked up. They're having a wonderful, jaunty, homoerotic, lovely time where they're doing a play to welcome the
Cinderella.
Americans. Yes, which also another thing that with Vonnegut being obsessed with certain things, he loves Cinderella. I don't know why, but Vonnegut loves Cinderella. But anyway, they're described as very handsome. He loves saying in this book that people are molded like cannonballs, like their muscles, and so it's very homoerotic and just like they get along with the Germans and it's fine.
Yeah, they call them Jerry.
Yeah, and
don't let Jerry get you down.
Yeah, like basically Billy Pilgrim's the main character, he's wearing this coat from a very clearly killed person. There's bullet holes going through it, and the British officer's reaction to him just looking miserable in this coat, like freezing to death, was, oh, they pulled a prank on you. You can't let them do that. You've got to show your masculinity. You gotta stand up for yourself. And it's
notable that they were captured in one of the first battles of the war too.
Yes,
like these guys didn't fight at all, essentially.
And
like they just were like, they've just been waiting it out.
And the Americans are just so like, they're so like, not really disrespectful, but like their etiquette does not meet the standards of the British, and they're very turned off by the Americans who, like, after not eating for like 10 days, have just huge stomach fits after they eat this big feast. And the British are so turned off by it that like a German officer literally comes and is like, I am so sorry, guys. Like, they'll be gone really soon. Like, I promise. And then we can all continue to play cards and do plays and musicals. And the British are like, okay, we understand. Like, they're like literal prisoners of war. There's like Russians like one fence away who are just like on death's door and are being killed daily. Crazy contrast.
And I mean, like while they're there, Paul Lazarro gets in a fight with one of them, right? He gets his arm broken, I think, because he
tries to steal something, and the guy, and it's described that the British guy like basically didn't even understand what was going on and just like accidentally broke his fucking arm completely. So.
And the anime character just like didn't even just like built massive, like he's out of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or something. And you got these like these little wretched guys walking around. Oh man, yeah. There's an interesting part. In one second. Let me see if I can find this exactly. Yeah. There's a really interesting section in the book where Vonnegut's politics stick out in this exact same area as well. And a German major reads out loud a passage from a monograph by Howard W. Campbell Jr. We said we'd mention him again. He is a well-known playwright and propagandist for Nazi Germany. And he's the main character of Vonnegut's earlier novel, Mother Night. And Vonnegut heads will know Howard Campbell Jr. is a spy. He is spying on the Nazis. He is not a real Nazi. In fact, but he does have to live the rest of his life afterwards, knowing he fought for the Nazis during the war. Yes, he helped lead to their defeat, but he actually had to experience that. It's a good book. It's interesting.
You are who you pretend to be. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But Howard Campbell Jr. has written this criticism of the United States that in the book is interesting because it's coming from it's being read out loud by a fascist, so it rings strange if nothing else. But I kind of wanted to read part of it because it is so cutting, and it is still so applicable, and because I feel better agreeing with it, knowing Howard Campbell Jr. is not actually a Nazi, having written it. Obviously, Vonnegut wrote it, but you know what I mean. But I like this quote, and it's him talking about why American prisoners of war don't behave well, quote unquote. And it goes like this, quote, America is the wealthiest nation on earth, but its people are mainly poor, and poor Americans are urged to hate themselves. To quote the American humorist Ken Hubbard, it ain't no disgrace to be poor, but might as well be. It is in fact a crime for an American to be poor, even though America is a nation of poor. Every other nation has folk traditions of men who were poor but extremely wise and virtuous, and therefore more estimable than anyone with power and gold. No such tales are told by the American poor. They mock themselves and glorify their betters. The meanest eating or drinking establishment owned by a man who was himself poor is very likely to have a sign on its wall asking the cruel question, if you're so smart, why ain't you rich? There will also be an American flag no larger than a child's hand glued to a lollipop stick and flying from the cash register. Americans, like human beings everywhere, believe many things that are obviously untrue. Their most destructive untruth is that it is very easy for any American to make money. They will not acknowledge how, in fact, hard money is to come by, and therefore, those who have no money blame and blame and blame themselves. This inward blame has been a treasure for rich and powerful who have to do less for their poor publicly and privately than any ruling class since, say, Napoleonic times. Many novelties have come from America. The most startling of these, a thing without precedent, is a mass of undignified poor. They do not love one another because they do not love themselves. Once this is understood, the disagreeable behavior of American enlisted men in German prisons ceases to be a mystery. End quote. And I found that to be a pretty, despite coming from an undercover Nazi, a pretty cutting analysis of the United States to this very day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am glad that Josh, that you did get to read Mother Night, because that is the one thing that I got back going through is everything is so much funnier realizing that he's basically a progenitor to the CIA's asset. It's so much better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he shows up later in the book wearing a Nazi uniform with an American flag superimposed over it,
and it's described clownish as shit.
Oh yeah,
beyond anything you'd see in American Psycho, right? Just all these clashing colors and let me find it actually.
Another thing that goes great and is great in the movie. And you have Edgar Derby have a moment where he gets offered by Howard Campbell Jr. wearing this suit. Hey, you should join our Free America Corps. And Edgar Derby gets to have a heroic moment where he's just speaks on the freedom of the United States and how they'll never stand with the fascists. And,
Again,
he gets to have that moment.
Yeah, he is literally I'm thinking about all of Vonnegut's other books. I don't think he's ever written anybody as heroic. You know what I mean? He usually doesn't have heroes and villains. So to have a character who at every turn, he is the hero of this story. He is the person who does every noble thing. He's when Billy Pilgrim gets sick, he's the one who watches over him. He's the you can tell Vonnegut really thinks a lot of whoever, whether that was his real name in real life or whoever it was that Vonnegut saw.
Looking for that quote, I even saw that Edgar Derby at one point is described as having the best body and physique of all the Americans.
It's literally,
he's just he's the best of them, and he's the one who doesn't go home. In fact, there's the part about saying none of the real soldiers survived the war. He's the real soldier. He doesn't come home. Billy Pilgrim and Paul Lazarro go home. It's interesting. The real soldiers, the scouts, Edgar Derby, those guys are dead and buried in an unmarked grave somewhere.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend for everyone at home to just look up Howard Campbell Slaughterhouse-Five, because the American Nazi outfit that Jacob was describing is
I might make it the episode art of
you actually should, because I think it's very good.
I found the passage that describes it.
Yeah, read it.
Campbell was an ordinary looking man, but he was extravagantly costumed in a uniform of his own design. He wore a white 10-gallon hat and black cowboy boots decorated with swastikas and stars. He was sheathed in a blue body stocking, which had yellow stripes running from his armpits to his ankles. His shoulder patch was a silhouette of Abraham Lincoln's profile on a field of pale green. He had a broad armband, which was red, with a blue swastika in a circle of white.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
So funny.
The movie doesn't quite capture.
No, it doesn't quite get it.
I think what would have been necessary is the 10-gallon hat is a crucial part of that. That is
agree.
just perfect. It's just so not like, I think Jacob, leading up to us talking about this, I think one of the things you said about the book was just like how Vonnegut is just so like effortlessly creative. And it's just, this is just a perfect example. Like he's just so funny. Like this is just perfect.
Somebody online, I can't lay claim to this joke, said that he was dressed like not Yosemite Sam, but Anti-Semite Sam, and that fits a little too well. I don't know where I read it. I want to credit it, but I don't. Credit to a nameless person I read years ago after I first read this book. But man, it really is. It's just another one of those little details of there's just so much wacky shit in here. Like just off the wall stuff that just happens. Like it'll just, you'll be going along and then you'll just have this. You'll just have, a whole diatribe about a failed science fiction writer who convinces a lady at a party that hell is real and that it's illegal to write anything in a novel that didn't actually happen in real life. And it's not like it just stuff just kind of happens. It's all part of the, just like I said before, tapestry of this book. You're just kind of walking around and it's Vonnegut saying like, here's this room I've created of just stuff. It's here, there, everywhere. And you can kind of, I'll take out my items and show it to you. Like, to make the Franco connection, like the guy from Spring Breakers running around saying, look at my shit, and grabbing this and that and just shoving it all in your face. And then what is your takeaway after it?
And again, the incredible bathos of these parts, like the incredible, like, the wackiness it's bathos because it's counterposed with some of the most horrific shit imaginable. Like just the paragraph before, you see the American Nazi outfit, right? As you say, Campbell's recruiting for the Free American Corps, for Americans to fight on the Nazi side. And where is they supposed to fight? They're supposed to fight only on the Russian front.
Yep, fight the Soviets.
The most brutal and horrific and the most brutal and horrific front of the war, because that's where the genocidal war is going on against. It's literally a war of extermination.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me here, but what Howard Campbell says, he's like, well, you guys are going to have to fight communism anyway, so you might as well fight it with me now.
Yeah, why not get it over with now? Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly enough, who was it who said we fought the wrong? Was it Patton who said we fought the wrong enemy in this war? That was the American stance in some sectors, especially on the right. The one more thing I wanted to say about Howard Campbell Jr. Is one more reference to the movie is something it adds in that wouldn't have really worked in the book, but it works as a visual gag. Is Edgar Derby says, no one stand up, no one go with him. And Paul Lazarro stands up and goes up to him. And they're like, Paul. And he said, and then Howard Campbell Jr. is like, let me shake your hand. He goes, I'm only here to tell you, don't answer your door, because one day someone's going to knock on it. And it cuts away from it. It works so well. It works so well. I've just redone
That's awesome.
Don't answer your door. And he's so short. Oh my God. One day somebody's going to come knocking on it. But yeah, and I mean, like, even notably enough, like Mother Night the novel shows that indeed the United States does very quickly go on to its war with the Soviet Union, and that's depicted in that novel. And readers of Mother Night who are reading this book would pick up on that, would be like, yeah, the U.S. did in fact immediately switch gears and go into wartime over the Soviet Union, and that's an underpinning of that novel.
There's a great book out there called The Nazis Next Door, which is about the American it's about the Americans spiriting various high-ranking Wehrmacht men over to the United States, and the resulting, because they were here for several decades in various very plum positions, and starting like the 70s or the 80s, there was this effort to hunt down these Nazis and root them out by individuals who realized, wait a minute, these people are evil. Why are they here, right? So yeah, good book if you want to get a little bit of the real world story.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah. So to move along, because there's just a lot of this book. Despite how there's a lot to say, despite how relatively short it is. It's like 80,000 words. It's not particularly long.
There's just so many good ideas.
Yeah, there's just a lot. It's Vonnegut kind of mocks himself with the character of Kilgore Trout, I think. Unfairly mocks himself, but he does. Which, for those who don't know, Kilgore Trout is a novelist I referenced to earlier. He's a sci-fi novelist who can't write for anything, but he comes up with great ideas. And Vonnegut, between this and his other novels where he has Kilgore Trout show up, very clearly makes fun of himself and his own ideas, and that he just likes to pump out ideas. But you do see that Vonnegut does have a lot of threads in his head that eventually he can't follow every thread, so he just throws them in there. But you can see this alternate career of Vonnegut as a Kilgore Trout character who writes a book and then never thinks about it again. He just throws it out the window and it's next idea. Because there are so many threads.
There, but for the grace of God goes Vonnegut. Yeah, I'm thinking of there's a thing that he says that he didn't think of himself as a writer for the simple reason that the world had never allowed him to think of himself in this way.
Yeah.
It's a question of, again, finding your audience, right? And Billy Pilgrim happens to be the only man who gets it.
Him and Elliot Rosewater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also shows up in multiple Vonnegut novels. But yeah. So Billy, after the war, and then the war is, there's not much more to say about, what happens. Dresden, as we said, gets bombed. Edgar Derby dies. Billy goes home. He never really knows why he doesn't get executed by the Nazis in the aftermath between they get taken by the Soviets, taken, into the custody of the Soviets. And Kurt Vonnegut says in his own memoir, I have no idea why the remaining Nazis who survived Dresden didn't kill us immediately. And he's like, I can't think of any good reason they didn't, but they just didn't. Obviously thankful they didn't, but just, it's just a thing, another chance that they made it through. But yeah, Billy goes back. He goes to optometry school. He has sort of a breakdown for a little bit where he goes to a mental hospital. It's not a super important plot point, but he spends some time there, which is where he learns about Kilgore Trout, the novelist. But yeah, and he marries this. He marries this woman that he doesn't really have a lot. I'm sorry, what's his wife's name? I feel bad.
What's her name?
It's
Barbara's the daughter.
Yeah, it's the daughter of the owner of the optometry school.
Oh, Valencia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Valencia, who is this? Billy doesn't seem like he has a lot of feelings for Valencia. He marries her, he doesn't dislike her. He's fond of her, but she's just this woman who is the daughter of the optometry school. She comes with a lot of money. She's not seen as particularly attractive. So she's very happy that she got a man like Billy, even though Billy doesn't see himself as much of a man. They're both just kind of some insecure people who by nature of, and the grace of the GI Bill and the mid-century economy, shoot up to massive prominence and wealth and success.
And I was going to say, before we recorded this podcast, we were talking about Dune. We're recording this the day that the Dune 2 trailer comes out. And actually, there is a kind of a lot of parallels between Paul Atreides and Billy Pilgrim, is the fact that they're both completely prescient, right? And so I thought it was very funny thinking about Dune. Paul sees this woman and he sees his entire future with her and he's like, oh, I'm going to love you for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And in this book, Billy Pilgrim sees her and is like, I know things are going to be very fine with us. Things are going to be okay for the most part.
The most mid-marriage of all time.
Yeah, I just love the difference between Paul being like, oh, I'm always going to love you, and him being like, things will be very stable and okay. I think we can do this.
Billy's like,
we will not start a galactic jihad.
Yeah. Billy's like, I'm going to cheat on you once and only once, and it'll be okay. Technically, I guess twice, but
I like
Montana Wild Hack is a little different.
Yeah, and I like honestly, I think going back this time, I found them to be a little more romantic than before. I kind of enjoyed their wedding night, the
I
scene
do
of
like
that
that part.
more. Yeah, I actually, despite it being described as like a very mundane, it's not a very like whirlwind romance. Like it's a very like, Billy doing something
Kind
for
of
himself.
transactional, yeah.
Yeah, but it ends up being kind of, I mean, they're supportive to each other, and they, like, yes, Billy has his infidelity later, which is terrible, but like he and based on that Geraldo Rivera quote I read earlier, you can imagine what Kurt Vonnegut thinks about infidelity
Yeah.
like that.
Oh God.
But
Yeah.
I did kind of find this time that they were romantic, they were sympathetic. I mean Billy's completely like distant to everybody in this book for the most
Yeah,
part.
she's more bought in than he is. For
Yeah,
sure.
but still, you can tell he does care about her.
Yeah,
Like, which is interesting.
when she thinks he's died, she dies because she drives in such a crazy way that she gets part of her car ripped off and she gets carbon monoxide poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Her exhaust system, yeah.
and it's another irony where their kids get to the hospital and they think their dad has died. They get the news their dad's okay, but their mom is dead. Another just little moment of weird irony. And yeah. Just to talk about the unfaithfulness for a second, it is weird because there is one reference to Billy at a party basically being unfaithful to his wife. Enough, I think it gets referenced like once in the entire book. And then you have obviously Montana Wild Hack, but that's a little bit of a different situation.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that though. The more specifically, because just to talk a little bit more about Tralfamadore, on the night of his daughter's wedding, Billy is kidnapped by aliens, Tralfamadorians, who suck him up to space and take him 90 million light years away, or some absurd number.
It's in the quadrillions.
It's huge, yeah. And they drop him in a dome. That's basically a recreation of his living room. And he's in a zoo, and he's in there by himself for a while. And then Montana Wild Hack, who is a actress mostly known for like sexual films like porn and like basically porn films, is put in there with him, and they have a romantic and sexual relationship that forms, and they eventually have a child together. And when Billy gets returned, and it never really says why Billy is returned to Earth specifically, or it doesn't really give details on it, Montana Wild Hack stays behind to raise their child on Tralfamadore. And the Tralfamadorians, they have this, like we said, they see all of time at once. They see Earth. They feel very bad for humans seeing time linearly, and they describe it as, imagine a guy who's like locked in a case, and he can only see one point, and he can't move, and he's on a rail, and it's taking him down, and he sees a little more, and he can never look back and never look forward, and then thinks that's the whole world. And that's their view of time. So yeah, they have wars. Yeah, they have death. They just like to look at the good times, because why not? And they see everything as completely immutable. They do not believe in free will. They say they've gone to dozens of planets, and Earth is the only planet that has come up with the concept of free will. In fact, they know their planet is going to testing fuel in the universe. They know it's going to happen, and they're like, yeah, it always happens. It always will happen. We always let him push the button, and we always will let him push the button, because we always have. Like, they don't see time as anything but fixed, which of course Billy has to come to see as well, due to his unique unstickiness, something like that. Is that a fair summary of the Tralfamadorians, you think?
Yeah, I would definitely say that one thing that I found kind of interesting when we were talking earlier about kind of like, is this real or is this Billy's imagination, is that like later in the book with Montana Wild Hack, like one of the last times we get a conversation with her is like they're already getting to that point in their relationship where they're kind of being like spatty with each other. Mm-hmm. Like he's like reading like he's reading Kilgore Trout. She's like, oh yeah, I bet you really like that, huh? So like it is funny that if he is like imagining this, like he's imagining them getting to the point where they're like arguing with each other and like kind of like having those kind of like unhappy aspects of a relationship. But
if it's a delusion, it's not a halfway delusion. He's all in. But he's come up with lore.
I really like them as a I mean, they're explored more in other books like a little bit. And one thing that, like to say about like all of other Vonnegut's characters is with the maybe the caveat of Campbell, who I think is pretty much concise. Like he's the same in here as well as Mother Night. A lot of his characters do have like, you know, inconsistencies. Like they're a little bit different in each book. And like for instance, in Sirens of Titan, the Tralfamadorian seems like way more high strung in that book, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And like not chill at all, and not these, like where in this book they're like these, you know, like almost ascendant, you know, they're they're like basically God in some way, you know, like they know everything that's going to happen and they're just like, this is it, we're just kind of viewing everything.
I like to imagine the difference is because in Sirens of Titan they're interacting with the Tralfamadorian on their terms, and in this they're interacting on the Tralfamadorian's terms. So it's kind of like they are presenting themselves to the human in Slaughterhouse-Five. So like they're putting their best foot forward, as it were. They're like, hey, this is our chance to come off as God. You know what I mean?
And
whereas in Sirens of Titan, isn't he like shipwrecked or something?
Yeah, but they're trying to answer a question or something. But the last thing I want to say about Tralfamadorians is that I really liked like Vonnegut like basically told a secondary version of them through a Kilgore Trout story, which he briefly goes into, which is like basically the same story, again giving credence to maybe the idea that Billy's just imagining this all. But in their version, I really like the idea that they were toying with the humans way more, and they were like making them invest in stocks. Like even though they're on like a different planet, they're like investing in stocks on Earth, and they like invest in like bananas or something, and it goes badly, and so they can like, they're like, it's prayer week, and they like convince these like humans to believe in God, and then like the stock goes up.
And it's all fake.
I'm a big fan of also the quick summary of the Kilgore Trout novel where he talks about Jesus, where he says the actual Jesus story just teaches you don't kill someone if he's well connected. And he says in Kilgore Trout's version, Jesus really was a nobody and God adopted him. Which is, I think, also Kurt Vonnegut's own perspective of Jesus. Kurt Vonnegut was very, very, very invested in the person of Jesus, despite being pretty like if he was a teenager today, he would be like a Reddit atheist. But he really loved. He left his wife over it, you know, like. But like he despite that, he loved the person of Jesus. He has a whole section in his memoir where he talks about. He says, let's come to he says he solved the problem on the debate of whether we should have the 10 Commandments up in schools and courts, because, you know, that was a big debate in 2005. And he said, instead, let's propose we put the Beatitudes up. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the poor of spirit, for they will inherit the earth. And he says that's his, and he talks about how he would like to call out basically the religious right by saying, what if we put up Jesus's actual words instead of the 10 Commandments from the Old Testament? He felt very, you know, and it's of course a little trite to be like, you know, it's like a trite, like Jesus was a socialist kind of kitschy like statement, but like there is a like truth to it, and Vonnegut clung to it very tightly, and he felt, you know, he took it very seriously.
Yeah. He would have done very well on r/2-sentence sci-fi stories.
Oh
We
my
got a lot of
God.
Reddit
I
gold.
love those so much.
Ready to go all my upvotes to Vonnegut. Yeah, he definitely had a situation where he said but he had a situation where he even had a friend who was like facing a judge for like his like activism and for fighting for socialism and this, that, and the other. And the judge says to him, and this is Vonnegut says this actually happened. The judge said to him, "How does a man successful as you come to this?" And he said, all because of those couple paragraphs that one man said on top of a mountain one time, referring to the Sermon on the Mount. So, you know, Vonnegut took it very seriously, and you can feel that interest in this novel as well.
Oh yeah. It's an interesting. I thought of Monty Python when you brought up Vonnegut's relationship with Jesus, right? Because when they were making Life of Brian, they were going to make it satire like about Jesus, and they realized, well, there's not really a whole lot that we can find like, you know, inherently funny about his teachings, you know.
Right.
So
right.
So it's you know there's a spiritual element that you don't necessarily have to be religious to access.
For sure. And I also and you know, and Vonnegut also makes it pretty clear in his memoir and his other interviews that he doesn't believe in things like heaven and hell. He finds them to be really ridiculous concepts, but he does have a sort of Tralfamadorian way of looking at things. He does really feel like time is, if you see time in his mindset as a dimension, the same as space, then we are just limited in our perception, and life is just, you know, death is illusory in the sense that we are always alive at some point, and indeed every point of our lives. It reminds me a whole lot of Alan Moore's book Jerusalem. It's very similar to that, or to Alan Moore's other more famous book Watchmen, of course, with Dr. Manhattan and all that. Very different, but I do think Vonnegut. I wonder if Vonnegut ever read Watchmen. I could see Vonnegut digging Watchmen, but
Oh, definitely.
I mean,
That's
they're
gotta go on the
contemporaries.
list.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wanted to quote something from Tralfamadore because it was my favorite passage from this book. Maybe not as a standalone, but in reference to the novel itself. I found it to be the most useful. And Trent referenced it earlier. Quote, "There are no telegrams on Tralfamadore, but you're right. Each clump of symbols is a brief, urgent message describing a situation, a scene. We Tralfamadorians read them all at once, not one after the other. There isn't any particular relationship between all the messages, except that the author has chosen them carefully, so that, when seen all at once, they produce an image of life that is beautiful and surprising and deep. There was no beginning, no middle, no end, no suspense, no moral, no causes, no effects. What we love in our books are the depth of many marvelous moments seen all at once." End quote. And I found that to be, you know, if you want to figure out what the point of this book is, I think you can't find any easier few sentences than that to say, well, point is a little bit of an aside, you know. But this is what we're doing. It's something that's beautiful and imperfect when taken all at once, and you can get what the author is getting at, whether or not he's able to make a concise point. Because, like we said earlier, this is a very nuanced situation. You know, we're not talking about a war here that could be all out condemned the way that Vonnegut railed against Vietnam and railed against Iraq and Afghanistan. You're talking about World War II. You're talking about a complicated life. You're talking about a weird time in history. And you find in other of Vonnegut's works, specifically his nonfiction, he can be a lot less nuanced than he is here. He can be a lot more like, here's the deal, I'm laying down the law. Certainly when he talks about fossil fuels in some of his 2005 essays, he is very much like, he doesn't show any level of nuance at all, and he got criticized for that by some. But in this book, he is able to show this broad tapestry because it is such a complicated situation, and it was so morally complicated for him. And there is no real takeaway. And at the end of the book, you're left like the bird, just kind of asking, you know, poots of wheat, you know, what the hell? We said it at the end of the last podcast, but we said we all some locusts for real. Feeling very similar to that. It's just like, we all some locusts for real. We're all some birds for real. Just not really sure where to go. But this is but this is what he had to share in a very Tralfamadorian sense, you know. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I really enjoy this book. I think we referenced Mother Night the most. I would definitely recommend that one as well, just for more William or Howard Campbell stuff. I think that book has one of the funniest descriptions of like the far right, like
oh my God,
this group of characters in there is hilarious.
The dentist school.
Yes, literally. But I would say my favorite Vonnegut book, kind of similar to the way that this one works, where it goes all throughout a man's life, interspersed, not in a chronological order, is Bluebeard.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it to anyone listening. If you want to get into Vonnegut, that's been my favorite. It's about painters. I would definitely recommend.
Absolutely.
They're
all good. I mean, Sirens of Titan, my God.
Yeah.
I won't spoil it, but the night I finished it, I was just like, oh my God, staring at a wall.
I have to take some sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, Jacob knows I finished Sirens of Titan right after a bad breakup, and I was ready to put my head through a wall. It was just one. I think of all of Vonnegut's books, that ending is just like just needless gut punch as hard as physically possible.
I also will say Cat's Cradle is another one. That's the one that really got him on the map. That one, if you want to know how Vonnegut feels about religion, I think that's Cat's Cradle is your best.
And that's probably his most absurdist, or one of his most absurdist.
Oh my God. Yeah. I wrote an essay in college, or not an essay, a nonfiction story dedicated to Cat's Cradle. That pulls from it, and I love that book. It might be my favorite Vonnegut, that or Sirens of Titan, but they're all really good. I'm not rushing to the end here, but like wrapping things up, coming to bigger conclusions here. What else should we take away from this? And since the podcast is called The Socialist Shelf, I guess I would ask y'all's thoughts on is there anything we can learn politically from this book? And if so, what?
Well, I mean, the obvious direction to go in first, of course, is way back in chapter 1. When he goes over to Dresden, when he goes over to East Germany at this time, and he meets his friend, right? And he asks his friend, okay, well, how is it to live under this socialist government? And he's like, well, at first it sucks because everybody had to work hard, but and there wasn't much shelter and there wasn't much food, there wasn't much clothing, but things are better now. I got a place, my daughter's getting a great education, so he doesn't, he doesn't shy away from the struggle and sacrifice that goes into creating such a socialist society, but neither does he really return to it.
Well, yeah, of course there's the anti-war element as well. But since it is so nuanced in the context, but yeah, there is that, and there's other books where he fleshes it out more, and certainly his essays. But yeah, it's not a thing that he dwells on. Things like that initial part, or there is the politics of Billy Pilgrim is like, because of his class status, is kind of tied up in right-wing politics. Not really, just his circle is pretty right-wing. There's a bumper sticker that says Ronald Reagan for president, which is before Ronald Reagan was ever considered for president, so that was a predictor right there.
Oh yeah, and he's able to stumble into that like Lit Crit podcast, not podcast, like radio show accidentally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just by virtue of the circles that he moves in.
Mm-hmm. He gets away with a lot. And it even shows all these rich guys on a plane being like racist as hell against like Polish people, I think. He has a criticism of like the upper class, certainly.
It's specifically so that it's John Birch Society level conservatives. Like it's specifically like I think it's his father-in-law is in the John Birch Society.
Yeah, and he's in the Lions Club. Is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
So the Lions Club is real, but I don't really know if they have political leanings. I think it's mostly just like all I remember is going to get frozen yogurt and there being like free mints from the Lions Club. Like I don't know if it's politically motivated mints or if they're just kind of vibing and they're retired. I don't really know.
Trent, not to dox you, but you live and we're all in the belly of the beast, but you really live in the belly of the beast up there in DC. So I'm sure you see all kinds of great.
Yeah, no, I think Vonnegut I go absolutely bananas here, just because I've told Jacob before, you go to a social gathering and someone will be like, oh, like, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I work for just the other day, someone was like, oh, I work over at Quantico and I look at F-35s and stuff all day. And, I have a friend up here who looks at maps of other countries to bomb. And you
sent me, I think you sent me like a fanny pack that you were like Koch brothers swag or something.
yeah. No, it was at a party in DC, and there was like, it was at the Anthem for people who live near here. And there was like a sign that said Koch brothers exclusive VIP party for like it's just fun stuff like that. But as far as the book goes, I was really impressed. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that's evergreen. Like we said, that the statistical information on the bombing has changed, but again, I think what you guys said about how Vonnegut was just like, well, really, it doesn't matter. Like,
plenty of people died in World War II.
Right?
Like, we don't have to.
But but so much is evergreen. I think I can't even imagine what it takes to go through what he went through and still with just subtle narrative devices be able to be like, this is what we went through. Like, I'm not going to get into the Eastern Front because that wasn't my experiences, but like he gives you just enough to be like, oh, that was hell's hell. Like they were in hell. Like the Eastern Front was hell's hell, you know?
Mhm.
And I think the historiography of like the war is every day, you know, of course, supporting that and just like what the Eastern Front was like and what the Russian, you know, Soviet people had to give up to win that war. And just like the difference between how I'll always imagine this book, what I'll always think of is just gorgeous homoerotic British officers
Oh my
and
God.
just listless, you know, Soviet soldiers
Yeah.
just looking out into the distance.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
yeah.
you know, the horror inherent in that, in the fact that, you know, there are sometimes wars that are necessary because the alternative to not fighting them is worse. And even when a necessary war is fought and prosecuted and eventually won, you know, the scars that it leaves on you unmoor you from time if they don't kill you.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's not easy, you know. It's a very difficult thing. And he and you know, Vonnegut himself later in life even reflected on World War II, feeling the necessity, but also said he felt like not felt like, he believed that the US had just taken up, you know, Nazi Germany's mantle in a lot of ways. And he really felt that in a lot of ways that made a lot of their fighting feel if not irrelevant, then at moments it felt less important. You know, and he says in 2005, he says the world sees us as Nazi Germany and they're right. You know, he's, you know, specifically talking about Bush's America. He says we're the same as them.
Oh yeah.
He has a he has a great passage that I wrote down from his book, which he's just writing down letters he's received and his responses. And I won't read the whole letter the guy wrote to him. This guy writes this whole letter saying, you're not a patriot. Saddam Hussein's going to come in over here any day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All this bullshit. And Vonnegut responds, please, for the sake of us all, get a shotgun, preferably a 12 gauge double barrel. And right there in your own neighborhood, blow off the heads of people, cops accepted, who may be armed. And that's his only response to him. And he says that's how he feels. And he goes on to say that's how he feels that that's how America wages war at this point. And how they want us to think is they want us to just, yeah, no, please save us all. Start killing everyone who has a gun. And then he just throws in cops accepted, you know, as an extra dig at the right wing of like, oh, well, not them. They're our heroes, you know. You know, he maintained that to the end of his life. But I will, if y'all don't have any other thoughts, I had one more quote from Vonnegut. I kind of wanted to end things on, if that's okay.
Yeah, I want to share one last thing.
Yes, do it. I'm not in a rush.
Please.
If anyone is into Tim and Eric or likes Tim Heidecker, he does have a song. I don't know if you guys know that he makes music, but he does have a song called Sirens of Titan about the fact that Tim Heidecker, when he was right wing, when he was younger, went to a college that Kurt Vonnegut was speaking at and like heckled him in the audience. And he's about how embarrassed he is as an adult.
Oh my God.
That like he went there because he was like anti-war and like yelled at Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh wow. So the song is like his like atonement for that?
Yeah, just talking about how stupid that was to go to. So yeah, that's it. But I know you're about to say probably something serious, Jacob.
Man,
so.
I've got moments I look back and cringe on, but I'm glad I don't have anything like that.
If I heckled Kurt Vonnegut, I would be that would be it, dog. I would check out forever.
It'd be all over, dog. Joss, any other thoughts before I close it on this? Because I think it's a good intonement to us all to make us to finish on a lighter note here.
Oh, please have at it.
Okay, I'll read this, and this is, you know, this isn't necessarily directly connected to the book. It is in some ways, but it is a great intonement, I think, for all of us. And it's this. And I'll just read this whole passage and close it on this. First rule, do not use semicolons. All they do is show you've been to college. And I realize some of you may be having trouble deciding whether I'm kidding or not. So from now on, I will tell you when I'm kidding. For instance, join the National Guard or the Marines and teach democracy. I'm kidding. We are about to be attacked by Al-Qaeda. Wave flags if you have them. That always seems to scare them away. I'm kidding. If you want to really hurt your parents and you don't have the nerve to be gay, the least you can do is go into the arts. I'm not kidding. The arts are not a way to make a living. They are a very human way of making life more bearable. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow. For heaven's sake, sing in the shower, dance to the radio, tell stories, write a poem to a friend, even a lousy poem. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something, end quote. And this is the show that we care about two things, good fiction and changing the world. And Kurt Vonnegut, he was a very depressed man at the end of his life, but damn it, he made some good fiction, and I appreciate him for that. So on that note, I'll just say everybody have a nice day, and so it goes.